Thank you.
Mr. Franks.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Admiral Rogers. Thank you for your service to the country, and your job is so very important to us all. You stated that your first mission priority is defense of DoD information networks. Would you suggest that that means that defensive operations doctrinally will take precedence over offensive operations?
No, because I remind the team, look, we have 3 missions, and we have to be capable of executing all of them. I can't go to my bosses and say, hey, I really just chose to focus on number 1. Now, don't get me wrong, like any commander, I have to prioritize. And so as I'm looking at the challenges out there, I have told the team we will prioritize against number 1, even as we acknowledge we still have to execute those other 2 missions. Yeah. But like any other operational organization, at times I have to prioritize resources, focus. But it isn't, well, it's just one and not the others. We've got to do all of them.
Yeah. Well, as you know, the DoD relies upon the civilian power grid for 99% of its power requirements, without which I'm told that it becomes impossible on CONUS to affect the DoD mission. Do your priorities include protecting the U.S. power grid and other critical infrastructure against cyber attacks?
So again, I don't have responsibility for the defense of that in the United States. I will say one of the things I'm interested to see if we can maybe look at doing differently, and I'm having this conversation in particular with Transcom at the moment. Right now, when it comes, for example, to critical infrastructure that the DoD accounts on to do its mission, when it comes to clear defense contractors who either are generating the capabilities that we use, advanced fighters, for example, and other platforms, as well as private industry, for example, for Transcom that provides services, lift, movement of cargo. Under the current structure, the Defense Security Service has overall responsibility for the interface with those private companies, not Transcom, for example, even though they work for Transcom or they provide a service based on a contractual relationship to Transcom, and not necessarily with us. I'd like to see, is there a way to bring those operational commands, Cyber Command, DSS, and that private sector together in a much more integrated way? Because what we're finding right now is I will become aware of activity, I will pass that to DSS, DSS passes that to the private sector. That doesn't come across to me always as the fastest, most efficient, most agile way to do business, and I'd like to see if we could maybe try to change that.
Well, Admiral, you know that that's been one of the challenges in the past, that sometimes, you know, the whole notion of protecting the grid from cyber security challenges is kind of walks the 13th floor of humanity, because we, in the department, your department, consider that a civilian responsibility. Of course, the civilian response is that is a national security issue and should not be our responsibility. And my fear, of course, is that neither put the sufficient focus on it necessary, and given your stated
yes, sir.
Yeah, so it's worth always touching base on. How will Cyber Command's posture improve once it's elevated? Do you believe you'll have all the resources and authorities you require to accomplish your assigned missions? And what do you expect your number 1 challenge will be in terms of Russia, China, Iran, ISIS, someone else?
Okay, so let me try to unpackage it, and if I forget one, please just let me know, sir. So, first, what's the benefit of elevation? You know, why have I and others recommended that that's a smart course of action? Even as I acknowledge the decision's not mine, as we've already talked, that's outlined within legislation. Now it's a timing issue, absent a change to the legislation. In the department's processes, when it comes to how we develop budgets, how we articulate prioritization, how we develop broad policy, it is generally built around the idea that the combatant commanders are the primary voices for the operational end of those processes, not subunified commands, combatant commanders. So one of my concerns has been, we talk about the importance of cyber, and I acknowledge that there are other priorities in the department, and yet for some, not all, but for some of our processes, the cyber expertise is not embedded in the current structure because you put it one level below. So I believe that elevation plugs us more directly into the primary decision-making processes within the department, which are really optimized for combatant commanders. It also makes us faster because now I've got one less layer that I have to work through. I've been very blessed in my time as Cyber Command. The Strategic Command commanders I have worked with, General Hyten, and boy, how quickly we forget. I can picture, he was a good flag officer friend. They were great to team with because I would tell them, look, if we're going to insist everything I do flows through Offutt, I can't get to timeliness, I can't get to speed, and this helps address that.
Time has expired. I
Thank
now recognize Mr. Cooper.